every women's speed championship match that was ever on speed. Now, because there was only 6 of those, I will also be covering the tournament leading up to the crowning of the first women's speed champion. First match takes place on speed on September 4, 2024 for the women's speed championship quarterfinal, and Io Sky will take on Lyra Valkyria. These first couple of matches will be 3 minutes rather than 5. Lyra with the whip, Io hits some back handsprings before she ducks a kick, hits the head scissors, and then Lyra then nails a kick of her own and then hits the wrecking ball drop kick to the floor. She gets Sky back in the ring and hits the wheel kick for a 2 count. Lyra tries for Nightwing, Io counters her out of the corner and then hits the springboard missile dropkick and another head spring. Io hits the Meteoroa in the corner and then scores a 2. Io scales the top and lands on her feet off the over the moonsault. Nightwing gets countered again into a sunset. Lyra scores a 2, rolls Io out of a crucifix, and then gets another near fall. Lyra gets a roll over to Io, Sky with the leapfrog. She catches a propelled Lyra off guard with the pinfall and then scores the victory to move on to the semifinals. Next match in the tournament next week on speed, and Naomi takes on Blair Davenport. Blair gets an immediate dropkick as the bell rings. She lifts Naomi up and gives her a Saito suplex. Blair lifts up a Naomi again and gives the Falcon Arrow, but Naomi gets the shoulder up. Naomi gives Blair a kick on the top rope. She then gives Blair the Heat Seeker and gets a 2. Naomi gets the powerbomb thwarted with a super kick and a Northern Lights suplex for a kick out. Naomi with a rising knee, she then hits the bubble bomb and scores a 2 count again. Naomi and Blair exchange forearms, Naomi with the high kick, she then misses the rear view and then eats a German suplex for the kick out with 1 minute remaining. Blair super kicks Naomi, Naomi then counters her with the rear view. Naomi then hits like a Styles Clash powerbomb and then locks in the Feel the Glow, which causes Davenport to give up, and Naomi will now face Io Sky in the next round. Next first round matchup next week, and we have Kairi Sane taking on Elektra Lopez. Elektra misses a bicycle kick, Kairi ducks a few lines, gets caught, and then laid out with the spin out slam for a 2 count. Lopez attacks Sane in the corner, Kairi stops herself and chops Lopez in the titties, Kairi then gets a tit chop of her own, and then Elektra chops her down to the mat. Lopez rebounds Sane and hits a spinebuster, followed by the gut wrench suplex for a 2 count. Kairi rolls out of the fireman's carry, scores a 2. Lopez then scores a 2. Kairi then bridges into a pinfall for a 2.5. Kairi propels off the ropes and hits a head scissors. She then whacks Lopez with the back fist, catches her with the interceptor, the sliding D, followed by the insane elbow, which will secure Kairi Sane a spot in the semifinals. Another week, final first round match as Candice LeRae takes on Piper Niven. Candice ducks a line and slaps the shit out of Piper and starts hauling ass around the ring. Piper stops Candice's attack with a headbutt and a big elbow for the kick out. Viper driver incoming, Candice then rakes at the eyes, hits a chop block, and then the step up Shining Wizard before Niven kicks out at 1. Piper stops the codebreaker by throwing LeRae onto her face. LeRae avoids being squashed by Niven's senton. LeRae then gives Piper her own sentons. Candice with the codebreaker, Niven then lays out LeRae with the corner uranage and the senton bomb, but Indy Hartwell at ringside puts LeRae's leg on the bottom rope. Piper starts gaffing with Indy at ringside. Niven then climbs to the middle rope and Indy starts getting involved as Candice distracts the referee. Candice hits a German suplex off the ropes, and then hits Niven with La Quebrada and secures the final spot in the semifinals. Finally on to the semifinals, and we have Naomi taking on Io Sky. Io shoulder blocks Naomi down and then hits the handsprings before Naomi slides through and hits the back mule kick, followed by the famous her for a 2 count. Naomi with the bulldog into the corner, she then hits a flying crossbody for the kick out. Naomi hits a hesitation dropkick. Naomi looks for the split-legged moonsault but lands in the splits with no one home. Io fights out of the heat seeker and catches Naomi's leg before she rakes it over the ropes and hits the springboard missile dropkick. Io nails the Meteoroa into the corner before Naomi is able to get the kick out. Io looks for the moonsault, but Naomi stops her in her tracks and hits the heat seeker. Naomi misses the split-legged moonsault. Io lays her out with the butterfly backbreaker. Io then nails the over the moonsault and secures the pinfall to move on in the finals. Final semifinal match, and Kairi Sane takes on Candice LeRae 3 days later on October 5th. Candice avoids the back fists and she eats Kairi's enziguri. Kairi gets the banderas and slides through for a 2 count. Candice then avoids a sliding elbow into a crucifix pin for a 2. Sane then rolls through and then bridges for a 2 count. Kairi follows Candice to the outside and hits a diving elbow. Sane then says fuck off and drops LeRae with an Alabama slam on the apron. Candice is somehow alive and kicks out at 2. LeRae rolls to the apron to avoid the insane elbow. She then drops Kairi face first and then rolls her back into the ring for a 2. Candice misses the step up senton and then gets caught with the interceptor. Sane nails the sliding D, climbs the turnbuckle, gets hair married off the top rope. LeRae then cinches in La Quebrada again and then scores a 3 count to earn her opportunity to challenge Io Sky. Finals match between LeRae and Sky in the WWE Women's Speed Championship is on the line with 5 minutes now on the clock. Io kicks it off with a running drop kick. She then hits the suicide dive to the outside with a nasty landing. She then hits the butterfly backbreaker. Io shoos off Indy Hartwell and then scores a 2 count. LeRae hits a drop kick and the step up senton for an Io Sky kick out. LeRae gets tossed off the tornado DDT. Io and Candice exchange strikes, and then Sky bridges off the German suplex, and LeRae kicks out at 2. Io jumps to the middle rope, and then Candice follows suit and starts the attack before she takes Sky on Mrs. Gargano's wild ride, but Io gets the shoulder up at 2 again. Io with the palm strike on the top, Sky then hits the Spanish fly, but LeRae continues her vicious assault. 2-minute warning, Io climbs to the top, and Indy Hartwell tries to get involved again. Io lands on her feet off a German attempt, and then hits the Meteoro in the corner, and then the drop kick to knock Indy to the floor. Io climbs to the top rope, Candice then gets the double boots up off the moonsault attempt. Candice then takes advantage and hits La Quebrada and then scores a 3 count to become the inaugural WWE Speed Women's Champion. 91 days later, and Candice LeRae defends the Women's Speed Championship against Natalya on January 8, 2025. Natalya with the schoolboy for a 2, she tries for the sharpshooter early on before Candice escapes and gets a baseball slide. Natalya avoids the elbow, takes LeRae to Snap Suplex City. LeRae then sneak attacks Natalya in the gut and tosses her into the stairs. Candice gets the missile dropkick off the top, followed by the step-up senton before Natalya kicks out. Natalya tosses LeRae off the tornado DDT. Candice then moves out of the way, and Natalya goes shoulder first into the corner. Natalya gets a 2 count off the Fujiwara armbar into the crucifix. Candice then holds Natalya in the guillotine for a few seconds before Natalya lays her out with the Michinoku driver. Candice eats the corner and then gets planted on her ass. Natalya gets tripped up. Candice then misses La Quebrada, and then Natalya then locks in the sharpshooter after LeRae fights her off for a while. With 30 seconds remaining, Natalya holds on to the sharpshooter, and eventually the time limit actually runs out, and Candice LeRae will retain the Women's Speed Championship via time limit draw. 7 weeks later, and Candice LeRae defends the Women's Speed Championship against Zoe Stark. Zoe chases after LeRae into the corner to start us off. LeRae slaps Zoe a few times before Zoe then starts caving in LeRae's stomach in the corner. Stark hops to the apron and both women exchange forearms. LeRae then gets a step-up kick. Zoe fights out of the German suplex before she super kicks LeRae back into the ring and gets a 2 count. Candice gets a crucifix bomb off the fireman's carry for a 2 count. Zoe gets the Bandera spot. She lands face first onto the steel stairs. The count to 9 takes 25 seconds, and LeRae lays in some half-ass offense and gets a 2. Zoe gets a hot shot on the apron. She then hits a missile dropkick off the springboard, but LeRae gets the shoulder up. Stark maneuvers LeRae all around into a cartwheel driver for another 2 count. Zoe eats the middle rope and LeRae holds onto the ropes for leverage, but the ref notices. Zoe rolls LeRae up for the 2 off of the distraction. Candice then hits a step-up enziguri for the double down. Zoe with the spinning heel kick and the reverse gut wrench. She then nails a Bama-Ye knee, but LeRae is a survivor. Candice gets hit with the Z360, which causes LeRae to be sent to the floor. Stark has mere seconds remaining and struggles to pull LeRae back into the ring, but she can't secure the 3 count before the time limit runs out once again, and Candice LeRae will also once again retain the Women's Speed Championship. Another 7 weeks later, on April 16, 2025, and Candice LeRae defends the Women's Speed Championship against Sol Ruca. Yeah! Candice hammers on Sol to start us out. Sol gets tossed to the apron, misses the springboard attack, makes Candice feel the waves, and lays out LeRae with the shoulder tackle and a bottom rope elbow attack that barely connects. Sol attacks the corner and then flattens LeRae on her back, hits a running knee, and scores a 2 count. Sol baseball slides onto the champ. Sol then gets back into the ring and drops LeRae with a spinning back suplex facebuster. Candice stops the Soul Snatcher and then gives her an NZ to the head and lays her out with a Devon neckbreaker for the kick out. Candice sets Sol up on the top rope. LeRae then gets smacked off the top and Sol hits the cartwheel DDT out of the corner for the 2 count. Candice counters the Irish whip and then makes Sol eat the ring post. Candice snags the belt from its place and looks to score the disqualification loss before the ref then yoinks the title back. Candice hits the recoil and then spikes Sol with the DDT before Ruca can get the shoulder up. Candice hits the step-up senton. She then misses La Quebrada. Sol is then able to score the Soul Snatcher. She covers LeRae and scores a 3 to become the new WWE Women's Speed Champion. 6 weeks later, on May 28th, and Sol Ruca defends the title against the Pitbull, Ivy Nile. Ivy takes out Sol's leg and starts fucking up Sol in the corner with the elbows. Sol lands on her feet off the monkey flip. Nile catches a super kick and then lays her out with a clothesline for the 2. Sol kips up to her feet and hits a forearm. Sol lands on her feet off the hip toss and then hits a facebuster before Ivy kicks out. Sol starts hanging 10 on Ivy's back and then gives her a super kick before Ivy kicks out again. Nile puts the boots to Ruca in the corner. She hits a running Savate kick and then hits a snap German suplex for a 2 count. She doesn't let go and then ripcords Soul into a roundhouse, and then nails the belly to back suplex for her kick out. Soul catches the Hurricane Rana, Ivy lands on her ass, plants up off the wheelbarrow, but then Soul hits the wing snapper. Ivy goes to the floor where Soul handstand evades an attack and then penalty kicks Nile right in the mouth. Soul hits a big springboard splash, but then Nile gets the kick out again. Ivy avoids the fireman's carry, she then hits Ruka with a big satellite DDT for a near fall. Ivy is getting frustrated and climbs to the top, where Soul then follows suit and Ivy is able to yoink Soul's arm and then hit a kneeling powerbomb before Soul gets the kick out. Nile nails the swinging Uranage, but Soul rolls to the outside. Nile sends her back in, but Soul is able to nail the Gamagiri and then maneuver into the ring to hit the Soul Snatcher and retain the Women's Speed Championship. Last match of the video takes place on July 9, 2025, and Soul Ruka defends the championship against one half of the Secret Hervis, Alba Fire. Alba takes her down and she tries various pinfalls. Soul rolls her up for a 2 before Fire nails her with an elbow. Alba hits the Gore Buster and then spikes Soul face first with the Hurricane Rana. Alba looks for the Gory Bomb, but Soul rolls her up for a 2 and then hits the Code Breaker before Alba saves her Soul, climbs the top and hits the Swanton, but Soul is able to get the shoulder up. Soul gets an elbow to start up her series of shots before Fire then catches Ruka with the sleeper hold, as the crowd then begins to do a Mexican wave, which I thought was pretty funny. Soul gets a kick out of the corner, Alba eats the corner again, and then a couple of shoulder tackles. Soul with the corner shot, Alba then pushes her into the ropes, but Soul hits a stiff-ass knee to the face for a kick out. Alba claws at the eyes of Ruka, Soul then counters to the whip with a facebuster for another kick out. Soul travels to the apron and rolls off the springboard, Alba then rolls her up for a 2 count. Soul then pops off the ropes with the Soul Snatcher to win the match and retain the Women's Speed Championship for the last time on WWE Speed. And that, my friends, was every WWE Women's Speed Championship match watched, so you don't have to.